Hi friends, welcome back. My name is Shannon and this is Planted 386. Thank you so much for stopping by. If this is your first time, I appreciate you clicking and spending your time with me. I know in this busy world and with a million different channels there are to choose from, you could have easily selected a different video, so I really do appreciate you being here. My hope is to build a planty community over here where we talk about all things plants, we share plants, tips, and tricks. That's kind of my goal with this whole thing. I am newer to YouTube, but I have been absolutely loving this platform. And if you are returning, thank you so much. I look forward to you guys' comments every single video, every single time. I try to always get back to you because I look forward to it, and it means a lot to me that you engage in my videos. So yes, you guys, without further ado, let's get past all of that. You know the drill. Like, subscribe, share, do the things. I appreciate it. I want to get into the video because I'm excited for this one. This is for all of my newer planty parents, or for those of you that are interested in getting into houseplants, but maybe you are a little intimidated by them. I'm gonna show you some today. Some are rare, some are not so rare, but I'm gonna show you some plants today that I have in my collection that have given me absolutely zero troubles. These are plants that no matter what will find a way to thrive, and I feel like in my decision making, like as in which plants I was going to select, I tried to think of plants that I've never had to rehab, that I have moved all over this house and they continue to thrive no matter what. Plants that I have propagated easily. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this, but plants that I've never had to rehab. That was super important to me. And just plants that I've had for a generous amount of time where I can easily say, they give me absolutely no troubles. And they honestly, these plants are just a pleasure to grow. So yeah, there's a lot of passion behind these, and I hope you guys will feel that. I do plan on giving you my care advice as we go along, and keep in mind, everybody's conditions are different, but I will walk you through to the best of my ability as to my care process and how I have taken care of these plants overall throughout their time with me. I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Okay, just a couple disclaimers before we get into it. I do have puppies and they are trouncing about, so I'm going to do my best in post to make sure you don't hear that. But if you do by chance hear pitter patter on the floor, it is definitely my dogs. Every time I film, they think it's time to play. The second one is I just want you to be aware that I have never propagated Anthurium. So there will be a couple Anthurium that I do show you today, and this is, keep in mind, the only genus in my collection that I have never propagated. More so because my Anthurium are relatively on the younger side, and I am also a little intimidated to propagate. But outside of those, I have propagated every single one of these plants and I have had success. So with that being said, I know I mentioned propagation in the beginning and I wanted to make that ever so clear. Also, I'm not sure propagation is something that I'm going to be doing with my Anthurium. I am more interested in breeding them. So with that being said, the first one I have for you is Scindapsus exotica. So this plant I have had for quite some time now. I do have her on my Instagram. I do have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all the things, but this plant is featured on my Instagram in a post, and I just think this is an absolutely stunning plant. This is one that you will be able to find literally anywhere. Any garden center should have it. Pretty common. Now, You may not find leaves exactly this large right away. These are pretty large. Exotica does get larger leaves, but like I said, I've had this one for a while. This is a little bit more, like, I don't know if you can see those smaller ones. Just to be clear, like, this is also new growth. You can see it is much smaller than some of these more mature leaves that I've had for a long time. One thing I will say is this plant has grown relatively slow for me. So if you are someone that is looking for a beautiful statement plant to go somewhere where you don't really want to fuss with it a lot, you just want it to be beautiful, I like to style my plants. So when I mention moving them around, that is something that I will do a lot. I love incorporating my plants into my home decor. That is not always the best for the plant, but this is one that no matter where I move it, it seems to be fine. So I kind of envision it really anywhere, on a dining room table, on a pedestal somewhere, maybe in a beautiful corner shelf, maybe draping down and trailing. I kind of just keep coiling mine around. I have also propagated this, as I said, so it isn't trailing, but I'm okay with that. I kind of like it looking bushy and full and just beautiful. I mean, the leaves really speak for themselves. This is also one that sort of tells me when it's thirsty, because the leaves will sort of curl in a bit. I'm not sure you can see, but there are little picks in there, and what I like to do, they're kind of popping up because I need to relocate them, but what I like to do is I like to just pick the vine down as it continues to grow into the soil, because those roots will then grow into the pot. So this is one that I've never repotted since owning it. I repotted it one time. I typically repot my plants after buying them. That's something that I do, maybe a lot of people don't do. It's a little controversial, but I do tend to repot my plants pretty quickly after purchasing them. I have many reasons for that, and maybe I will do a video on that someday. But yes, that being said, I have never repotted it after that. It's just been in the same soil. Nonetheless, it continues to grow on. It doesn't require a ton of water. And yeah, it's just super easy. It's just super easy, super beautiful. And I really wanted to share this with you. I thought, wow, that's one that I think anyone could purchase, no matter their skill level, and really get some joy out of it, and it really not be too intimidating. At least that's been my experience. Okay, next is Aglaonema pictum tricolor. This one has become, in recent months, definitely much easier to get your hands on, and definitely much more affordable. When I purchased this, it was a teeny tiny little plug. I believe I paid $35 for it. I got it from Blue Moon Tropicals, and this was back when this plant was very pricey. It was very, very pricey. I want to say something around this size would have gone for several $100s back then. So I took that little tiny plug, and I've been able to grow it out into a mature plant. Now with Aglaonema, I do have a few varieties of Aglaonema. The reason I chose to show you this one is because of all of them, this is what I believe to be my most beautiful. It's also one that tends to be, or was, a bit more on the rare side, that has become much more easily accessible. And the foliage on this is just absolutely striking. Really, really beautiful. I've grown this in an array of conditions. I originally had it in my Verena cabinet, which then led to my Millsbow cabinet. From there, it outgrew the cabinet. I acclimated it into ambient with no issues. From that point, I moved it from a higher light location to a lower light location, and it still seems to trudge on. There's new growth coming. It has multiplied. This was just a single tiny plug. There was only one shoot. So it has definitely given me a generous amount of growth, I think, in the time that I've had it. Now, I've definitely had this well over a year now. And in that time, I've never had any issues with this. I keep it in a crock. I want to say this is ceramic, and just my chunky soil mix. Really, really, really simple. With Aglaonema, you're going to want to divide them. That's typically the easiest way to propagate. And yeah, I just think it's an absolutely beautiful plant. Again, something that you could really place anywhere, and it's just going to continue to thrive. The other varieties of Aglaonema that I have actually live outside in my pergola, and both of them give me absolutely no trouble. So I know Aglaonema as a whole is an amazing genus. It's going to provide a lot of oomph to a space without a lot of requirement. So it's definitely one I would recommend to a newbie. Okay, next on my list is going to come as no surprise to those of you that have been here for a while. This is my small Anthurium vittarifolium. This was an accidental shipment that I got from the Green Escape, but the reason I chose this one instead of my large one to show you, and I can pop in a clip of my large one as well, so you can kind of get an idea of what this plant will wind up looking like. But the reason I chose this one is because I got this as a 3-leaf little plug, so small. A lot of my plants I got as cuttings or as just small plantlets, and this is one that it just took off. It just really took off without any effort. I don't even have this topped with moss, and typically I do. So did I mention the name of this, you guys? Anthurium vittarifolium. I believe I did, but just to be sure. Anyway, it is putting out a new leaf, and I just love the way that this plant grows. I love the way that this looks. I think this could be really beautiful, styled pretty much anywhere. Say you have like a really beautiful shelf. You could put this on the end of the shelf and just kind of like let it drape over the side. I have this on top of my Millsbow tall. My large one is on top of my Baladan cabinet, and they just grow with just water them. That is all it asks of me. As I said, I don't even have to top the aerial roots with moss. It actually looks like this one, is going to produce I'm not sure if that's a flower. It could be, but I literally got this maybe back in March, you guys. March. This leaf has a little bit of damage. It is the most recent one. The circles, that is literally from the magnet. Anytime I went to go close the door, this kind of kept getting in the way, and there's a magnet that just kept like smashing the leaf as it expanded. That made me so sad, but fortunately this grows super quickly. I have another one on the way, another leaf, and to be honest, the anthuriums that sort of trail like this, in my opinion, they're some of the most fascinating plants to watch grow. I mean, the emergent leaf, it will start out ever so small, like that little teeny tiny, this right here. Can you guys even see that? That is going to become a huge leaf, and to just watch that process unfold is absolutely mesmerizing to me. It is, I can't even describe the level of awe that I get into when I watch these leaves emerge. And I just know for someone starting out, that would probably also be a super cool experience to kind of watch a plant do something, in my opinion, that's just like so magical. I told you there would be a lot of passion behind this video, but I love these plants, and I just think that they're absolutely amazing, and I would love everyone to discover them, mainly because of the level of joy that they provide me. I know it's not the same for everyone, but yeah, super cool, super beautiful, and a super easy one. Okay, you guys, next is, again, gonna probably come as no surprise to those of you that have watched my videos before, but this is my Rhipsalis, also known as the mistletoe cactus. I am obsessed with this plant. I recently upsized the pot. I ended up choosing this, in my opinion, very beautiful patinaed terracotta pot. This is one of the oldest pots, if not possibly the oldest pot in my collection, and it was available at the time that this became ready to be potted up, and I was so excited at the idea of this plant being in this pot. I just thought the two of them would pair so beautifully, and I think that mission was achieved. You guys, this plant brings me joy literally every day. It sits in the hottest window of the house, and we live in Florida, so I always say to people, you know, if you're growing and it says full sun, in most cases, okay, but not Florida full sun. Like, Florida full sun is a different entity. We are just so close to the equator and it just gets so humid here. It's almost, to be honest, it's a little unbearable in the summertime. And so for a plant to be able to withstand Florida full sun, it's kind of a rarity. It's usually a native plant. Like, I've definitely, unfortunately, cooked several things assuming that full sun meant Florida full sun. And so I just say that because for those of you growing in Florida, I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I've made. And I always like to ensure that the plant's going to get at least some part of shade throughout the day. And if it's not, I try to make sure that it gets watered every day. That's another thing. We don't get water like we used to, like rain every day. We used to get an afternoon shower literally every day, and we do not get that anymore. Recently, we've had a lot of rain, but we also went months with very, very little. So the soil does become hydrophobic, and it's just really difficult living conditions. But this plant literally can grow anywhere. As I'm saying, it grows in the hottest window of my house. It will go bone dry sometimes, and I will know that it is absolutely desperate for a drink because the little vines will become shriveled like a raisin. I have talked about this plant so many times already on this channel because it literally can do no wrong in my book. I have moved this all over my house. I did find that it loves that bright, intense heat, and so I just continue to keep it there. I keep it on this pedestal, and it just sits in the window on top of it. I think it looks absolutely beautiful, and it's something I look forward to looking at every day. I know that's maybe silly because it is just a Rhipsalis, but the more I experience these plants, the more varieties that I acquire, the more I love this genus as a whole. I have propagated it. It's very, very simple to propagate. It will literally, all you have to do is break the piece off and stick it in soil, keep it moist, and it will grow. Like, it's just amazing. So yes, this is one that I say definitely is a beginner friendly plant. And it is also very, very easy to find. So this is not going to be something that you should have a hard time locating. It really should be very, very simple. In terms of care for these plants, I treat them all pretty much the same, if I'm being honest. I typically only water once a week. If I find the plant or a plant seems to not be ready for water, then I will literally just skip it until the following week. Or if by chance I come through midweek and see that it's dry. I have kind of curated my collection, if you will, to be relatively manageable for me, to see when things are going awry and to be able to manage it quickly. One thing I will say when you are starting out, as difficult as it is to avoid buying all the plants, I do recommend sort of spacing them out in between purchases, just so you, especially if you're purchasing different genus. But yeah, I told you that I would tell you how I care for them. All of them so far have been grown in my soil mixture, which is really just a chunky soil mixture. I prefer ProMix soil, which has the myco built in. It's a blue, or it's a white bag with, I believe, like a blue stripe and maybe black writing. I've tried several soils, and that one seems to work the best for me. I also find my plants seem to love it the most of all the ones that I have tried. What else, you guys? I typically will add something to the soil, such as perlite or perhaps my homemade pond. Sometimes it'll be bark. If I have it, tree fern fiber, if I'm lucky enough to have that, I will add that. Sometimes cocoa chips. It really just depends, and it's really more so to make sure the soil is airy enough. Another thing to consider is to make sure you are making your soil mixtures sort of accommodate your watering schedule. In other words, if you are someone who is a bit of an underwater, or if you have a hectic schedule and you think that you're not going to be able to water as much, or that's something you're afraid of, I would probably make my soil a little less chunky than for someone like me who tends to be a bit of an overwaterer. I hope that makes sense. All right, so the next one, I know it was like a side tangent. I should really have put that maybe in a different video, huh? But I don't know, I feel like I'm talking to perhaps some newbies out there, and I wanted to incorporate some tips along with the video, but I could definitely do a whole separate video on things that I've learned along the way as a planty parent. This next one I have for you is Anthurium Silver Blush. I chose this Anthurium because, again, it's not one that I've ever had to rehab. I can't say that for quite a few of my Anthuriums, especially the ones that I got in my early days of being a plant parent, but this one has never, ever given me trouble. It's never missed a beat. The only thing that I have kind of dealt with this one in particular is spider mites that tend to pop up as the leaf is emerging. Usually I can just take care of them with my homemade spray. And that pretty much alleviates the situation. I will show you these other leaves. There's not a ton of spider mite damage, maybe a little bit, but overall, I just feel like not only is this Anthurium absolutely breathtaking, just in that of itself, like just the leaves overall, the veination, I believe that this would look absolutely amazing anywhere you place it. It really just sort of speaks for itself. But another amazing thing is in the color that these leaves emerge. It's sort of its own show. So not only do you get the pleasure and the joy of watching the leaf expand, but you also get this explosion of color, and it's really just, it's just striking. I do layer this with moss, so it's in my regular soil mixture. I do keep my Anthuriums and most of my plants in a cache post, so as I water them, I'm not really a fan of the run through. I keep a lot of things in drainage, no drainage, if you will. This just basically ensures that my Anthuriums especially are never without water or bone dry. That seems to work well for me. If you have leaves that crisp, maybe try that fashion of using a cache pot, a nursery pot with drainage holes, a chunky soil mix paired with a layer of moss for those aerial roots. And the moss also helps to keep the top layer of soil from drying out completely as well, which I think inevitably is what keeps the plant from crisping. But anyways, enough about her. I could talk about her for days. Just know that it's been one of the easier Anthuriums for me, and if that's a genus that you are looking to get into, I would say this is an excellent place to start. In terms of how rare this plant is, I wouldn't say that this is difficult to find. It goes in phases, at least that I've noticed here in where I live. There was a point where I was looking for it and I was only able to find hybrids. I do have another Anthurium that is a hybrid of this. And then I was able to find them. And then I think I went to search them not so long ago, and it was seemingly a little bit difficult to come across a silver blush on its own. So maybe it comes in waves like that. Maybe where you live it will be simple. I wouldn't say that this is a rare Anthurium anymore, but it's just absolutely beautiful. I'll give you one more look at those leaves before we move on because they are worth it. It's also one that seems to hold on to her leaves pretty well. Like these were the ones that I started with. I think these two, maybe it had three, and as you can see, it's been sizing up like crazy, and I have not had this plant, like I've had it for, I would say, coming up on a year. I mean, definitely long enough to know what it likes and what it doesn't like, so yeah, it's never given me a single issue in that time. All right, you guys, next is Euphorbia Ghost. It's called, also known as Euphorbia lactea. I believe it's Euphorbia lactea. I will definitely have it on the screen for you, but what a cool, interesting plant. This was definitely more difficult to find back when I got it. I would say it's a little simpler to find now. It's a simple Google search, I would say. It's definitely, I can buy them here locally at some of our local growers. So I guess maybe depending on where you live, but this is such an easy plant. I know I keep saying that, but that was definitely a requirement in selecting these plants. I needed them to be easy. I needed them to be interesting and intriguing enough for you to be a new plant parent and want to see it thrive and see it grow and see the changes, see the potential that the plant offers. And so I really tried to keep things interesting, easy. Sam, and I have some crackers over here, some crackers, and he's gonna be my best friend now. No, sir. So yeah, I got this. We got this, actually, John, this was one that John really liked. This was definitely one that he picked. Back in those days, I wasn't really wild about euphorbia or cacti in general. Like, I don't know. John definitely sort of took me down the cacti journey, if you will, because it was definitely something he decided was cool well before I got into it. So anyway, when we got it, it was basically this tall. I know because it hadn't branched yet. It had begun to put out its first arm, and that is what you see here growing up out of the pot. because when we first got Samp, I had it in the window, and he loves to put his nose in the window, as dogs do, and he knocked it off. It was fresh growth, similarly to this, and he just knocked it off. So I was bummed, but I literally just stuck it back in the same pot, same soil. And this is rooted, you guys. Like, this is definitely, there's resistance, like, it ain't going anywhere. So super easy to propagate. I also would like to note that this rooted whilst this soil would tend to dry out absolutely completely, because it does sit in my cactus window, which tends to get pretty warm. So, and it's not one that I like. I get to it every week, but it's definitely a window that could probably use double watering. So yeah, if the more you keep this hydrated, the more euphorbia, in my care and my experience, I've noticed they like a little more water than you may think. What I notice is when it starts to dry out too much, or if I think, ooh, should I water it? It either will abort these little leaves that it puts out, or it will not produce the little leaves at all. So, as I said, not only is this plant like a statement piece, but it does produce these little leaves on each single point. If you keep this hydrated, euphorbias can be so cool. Yeah, they will do super interesting things, and it will branch out in the most interesting ways. And of course, the color, in my opinion, is just absolutely magical. It looks just like this creamy, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like Hershey's Cookies and Cream, the candy bar, like the mint version. Can you imagine? Oh, that sounds so delicious. But yes, you guys, keep it in terracotta. It's been in this pot for most of its journey with me. I believe I only had it in a smaller terracotta in the very beginning, and then it pretty much outgrew that, and I then potted it into this. It could probably use a repot for sure. It does tend to dry out quicker than I need it to, and there is a root starting to come out down here, so definitely due for a repot. I will probably take one of these arms and propagate it at that same time, because I don't want this to get too top heavy. I would like to continue to see this grow really sculpturally and just cool, you know? I want it to be like a cool statement piece, and at the time that I repot it, I am going to separate that. But yeah, I just thought this was a cool one to show you. Super easy peasy. A little slower to grow than my other euphorbia that's similar to this one, my trigona, but that one is all green. So obviously it's going to photosynthesize and, you know, in a different way that this one will, being mostly white. But what a showstopper. How cool could this look like? I don't know, sitting on top of a piano, or like, I don't know, you guys, I get a little wild with my imagination and plant styling, but for me, it's just in the window. But I do, and I would like to put this somewhere a bit more, like where it could be noticed a little easier, but it just loves that window, so I don't know. It's one of those things, you know? Okay, you guys, I know at this point in the video, you're probably wondering, what about Monstera? And absolutely, Monstera is going to be in the video. All of my Monsteras are a little too large for me to hold up, except for my elbow and my Aurea. Now, my elbow I'm not gonna recommend because those can be a little bit tricky, and I've also heard of people having issues with their Thai constellations, but I've never had an issue with my Thai-cons either. And I've also never had an issue with my Aurea. If you've been around, you've seen my green form. It's out in the pergola. I would love to have it inside, but it is just absolutely far too massive to fit anywhere in here. So I'm going to show you my Aurea because I have never had any problems growing any of my monsteras. They have all been nothing but a joy for me to grow. I've even grown a Tychon out from tissue culture, and I never had an issue. I actually recently gave my baby tissue culture that's grown out some to my mom because she's been wanting a monstera, and yeah, for sentimental reasons, I was hanging on to it, but I really don't need to. So it was a joy to be able to pass that on to her, and then I can still visit him, you know? Anyways, so this is actually an Aurea or Aurea, and I got this as a 3-leaf cutting. It has since given me a ton of leaves. It's actually sized down because I don't have it on a pole. That is something about a monstera to take into consideration. They definitely want to climb. They're definitely going to want some form of support. So I do need to, I wouldn't say that this is necessarily ready for a repot like right yet. There are a couple very fine roots coming out at the bottom, but they tend to they do like a repot, but because this started out as a cutting, I am going to refrain from repotting it just yet. I'm going to really let those roots establish themselves before I do that. However, for the most part, anytime I've repotted a monstera, it's actually done nothing but benefit the plant in huge ways. So I don't have the room, maybe I do, to get a support in here. Maybe I could put something just like in between the nursery pot and the cashpo, top it off with some moss. That's probably what I'm gonna wind up doing, just a typical cocoa pole, just to get this guy going a little bit more. But this is, again, another really easy, interesting plant. It adds a little bit more interest than the green form. However, I would say this is a little slower to grow than my green form. In fact, all of my monsteras are slower to grow than my original green form, Monstera deliciosa, that has absolutely never given me any trouble, other than they are prone to getting thrips. I have had thrips on my large monstera outside on a couple of occasions, and I believe my Thai constellation got them at one point as well. I was able to eradicate them pretty easily, but that is just something to note. They are going to want support. They are going to want, or they do have a potential for getting thrips. But overall, the level of joy that they provide is totally worth it in my book. Another cool thing about this particular monstera is it's called, oh my goodness, you guys. I'm drawing a blank. The variegation. If I will put it on the screen, but it is an interesting form of variegation that happens in certain plants where you won't really know what the variegation is going to look like until the leaf has fully matured. So that's another fun part. It's like, as I get that new leaf, it's not necessarily instant gratification. I still have to wait for it to kind of come together. I think it's called Polaroid variegation. I will make sure I put it in on the screen. But yeah, super easy, lives in the brightest window of my house on a sort of pedestal. And yes, gives me a new leaf about every month or so, and has absolutely required nothing special of me since owning it. And it is another one that I bought in the mail, so this did have to travel as a pretty fresh cutting. It did have a nice aerial root going, but yeah, so it did have to travel. It came back with no issues. I don't even think I lost a leaf in the process. So it's an easy one, you guys. It's an easy one with a ton of payoff. If you have one, you know. And I mean, the leaves are just Stunning. Love the fenestrations. If you get a variegated one, of course, there's the added joy of, you know, seeing what variegation you get with each new leaf. But honestly, the green form gives me joy in its own way. You know, does that make sense? I'll put a clip in of my large Monstera. Next is a very, very common one. It is none other than your typical Christmas cactus. This is an Easter cactus. Just any of the Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, any of those holiday cacti are going to be rewarding in my book. They're very easy to take care of. It's not one that's gonna like a ton of sun or direct light, so it grows very, very easily in the house. And I actually need to water this one. So another really interesting thing about this plant, especially for a new plant parent, is you can tell that it needs to be watered because the leaves will sort of shrivel. And that is a clear sign that she is ready for her drink. Today is watering day, and she will get it right after this video, but it's just simple. It's a staple for a reason. They're so fun, sort of just hanging in a corner. Of course, you get the reward of the bloom depending on the variety that you have and the time frame, but I know for sure Easter, this is going to give me the most beautiful white blooms, and it's very generous with the amount of blooms that you get. It's not like a standard cactus where you're going to get like one bloom at a time. You will get multiple blooms on this, and usually someone in your family or a good friend will have one of these. So as common as they are, it's probably one that you could honestly get a cutting from your family member. I chose to put mine in this disco ball planter. I just think it looks so cute, and it hangs in my little cactus window. I love the pairing of the two together. I can't wait to see this sort of really take over the pot and sort of start draping down. But the added shimmer of the disco ball planter paired with the super interesting shape of this plant, I just think it's a fun pairing. Since we talked about soil mixtures, and because most of my plants are in soil, I want to show you an example of what my mix would look like. So it's pretty dusty overall. It retains moisture. Like, I've not added any water to this, but when I squeeze it, I can feel that there is some moisture to the soil, meaning it never seems to go hydrophobic, and that is another reason why I love this ProMix soil mixture. You can find it on Amazon, you can find it around, but yeah, it's just I keep it in little batches that's relatively easy to access in an old thrifted bin, and as I need it, I just use it. I keep it handy in my little cozy corner. So yeah, you'll see chunks of bark, you'll see some cocoa, some bark, a generous amount of perlite. The soil mixture does come with perlite in it, but I like to also add extra perlite just because I do tend to be a bit of an overwaterer. But if you're not an overwaterer, you tend to be a bit of an underwater, this may be a good soil option for you where you don't necessarily have to add a ton to it, and it's going to retain enough moisture for you until you can kind of get around to it. Especially if you were to pair like some sphagnum moss on the top, definitely would help. This is one a bit different. I believe this is the only one that I'm going to show you today in my semi-hydro mix. This is Syngonium chiapense. Syngoniums in general, overall, have been extremely easy for me to grow. I have Syngonium albo, I have Syngonium Winlandii. I don't know why that was so difficult for me to say. I think I have Syngonium Maria. I have a few different varieties of Syngonium, including chiapense. And the reason that I chose chiapense is because She's my favorite. She's my favorite of all of them. I love these leaves. I know they're relatively simplistic, right? There's really not a lot going on here, but they are really the cutest little heart shaped, and I do love the lobes of the chia pens and how they tend to be offset a bit. It kind of reminds me of my Anthurium papillolaminum, but in like a syngonium format. I don't know, there's just something about misshapen lobes that I personally enjoy. But overall, syngoniums are so easy to take care of, at least in my care. I've grown them in soil. I've grown them in semi-hydro. I find they prefer to be in pon or a semi-hydro of some sort. They tend to like to be damp. I can't say that this is a plant that really prefers to dry out, at least not in my experience. Another reason why I switched a lot of mine to semi-hydro, just because they seem to love that access to moisture all the time, and I never let my vessels go bone dry. What else? Oh, propagation. So easy with syngonium. The aerial roots are always very generous. They're always sort of protruding. You can kind of see right there, I would hope, those little aerial roots. And that is all I've done here. This, I will say, this is a very full situation. One thing I don't love about syngoniums is they do like to climb, and because of that, they can tend to get a little leggy here and there. So what I like to do is I like to propagate. Because this is such an easy plant to propagate, as these start to get tall, like once this leaf unfurls here, I will chop this and I will propagate it in water, and I will just add it back to this pot. Or at that point, I'll probably need a bigger pot, but I would like to keep this nice and bushy. And I find with syngonium, as long as you're on top of propagation and you continue to make those chops, you can have a beautiful bushy syngonium. One thing I've noticed about the variety when Landii is it tends to be a little bit more bushy, at least for me, in that of itself. I'm so sorry, you guys, I'm fumbling over my words. But this is one that I think it would make a beautiful statement anywhere. It doesn't grow wide and chaotic. It grows very upright, and you could put this on a pole and let it grow up a pole in a corner of a room, and I'm sure it would be absolutely stunning. Continue to add to that pot and it'd be nice and lush. But I think for me, I prefer it sitting on my shelf, a nice full pot of it. I think it looks lush and beautiful, and I just think overall it's a joy to grow. And I think syngonium overall, it's just an easy option that's going to give you a lot of payoff for, again, the amount of work. So yes, syngonium chia pens. Okay guys, next on my list is lipstick plant. This is actually, I think, the last plant that I have. I'll probably throw in a little bonus. But this is my Black Pagoda lipstick plant, and I'm adding it to the list of easiest houseplants because I got this plant from a dear friend of mine in our local planty group, and I think I believe we traded, or maybe I bought it off of her. I don't know, something like that. It was really nothing, but she had told me that it was one that was struggling for her. I mean, I felt like when I got it, it still looked nice, but she just felt like she wasn't doing right by the plant and she just wasn't vibing with it. So she wanted to find it a new home. And I remember I saw this for the first time somewhere, I think at like a nursery or something. And I was so amazed by the backs of the leaves. I just literally thought they were so cool that I almost immediately just bought it, but something told me not to, and then it turns out my friend ended up wanting to part ways with her. So I bought it from her, and she had told me that it wasn't in like the best condition. Again, I didn't think that it was like in bad shape. Anyways, since buying it off of her, I repotted it once, and you guys, it has literally transformed. Like, she is so happy. She is filling out her pot. I can't get over how beautiful it looks. In my opinion, this would look beautiful literally anywhere. Like, I can't imagine this looking bad anywhere you put it. I personally keep it on sort of like a little pedestal that's like in the cactus window, and it loves it there. However, I do move it around. So it kind of started out in that spot, and then I moved it into my cozy corner on top of my Milsbo tall because I also like it there. Again, it's more about like the styling aesthetic. So I ended up putting it up there, and it did okay. It's sort of just, it didn't give me any growth up there. But since then, I added some Barina lighting to the top of my cabinets, and it did start to grow once I added like more light. But I don't know, there's just something about the way that this looks draped over in the corner that I have it that I love more than over the Milsbo tall. So I ended up moving my vittarifolium, the baby, to its spot, and I moved this back to its original location. And since doing that, this thing is just putting out growth literally everywhere. Like, new vines are coming everywhere, and I can't tell you how much that excites me to just think of having like this pot like just overflowing with this beautiful plant, this beautiful foliage. So the front of the leaf, hey guys, you're not being very demure. Sam, why don't you come say hi to everybody? Since you want to be the star, why don't you come say hi? You in a way, and you be very loud. You be very loud. Yes. Yes, why do we have to fight? Why do we have to fight? Huh? Can you sit? Can you show them how you can sit? Can you sit like a good boy? Oh, there he is. These are our puppies, and this is the pitter-patter that you've probably been hearing. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can you be good? Sorry for the interruption, guys. They usually make a feature in every video, so there was their feature. Hopefully we'll be able to move on now. I don't even remember what I was saying about this amazing lipstick plant, but it's really simple. Honestly, this thing could use a shower. It could definitely use like a dusting. I've moved it all over the house in different lightings and different situations. It's been probably overwatered, it's been underwatered, and it just, honestly, it just thrives on. But just envisioning this pot overflowing with this beautiful plant one day, it excites me. There's something kind of like definitely jungly to me about it. These leaves sort of remind me of like, I don't know, is it me? Is there like some kind of like toxic vibe to this or something? I don't know, it's just so cool. It's so cool, you guys. It looks like it could be on another planet. And the new growth coming in is like chartreuse and burgundy. It's just, seriously, I can't say enough about it. And it's another one that's super easy to find. As I said, I originally saw this, I believe, for the first time at like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. It was at a big box store. So easy to get your hands on. You can grow it outside so long as it doesn't freeze in your area, and so long as it has filtered light, meaning not any, it doesn't want any direct light. Yeah, or you can grow it inside. It's just easy peasy. I just think it's such a cool plant. And I really don't hear a lot of people talk about lipstick plants. Like, on occasion I'll hear someone mention them, but overall, it's not one that I really hear a ton about. The last one on my list, you guys, my bonus, is going to be my Hoya Carnosa Crimson Princess. It literally will go all the way to the floor if I untangle those tendrils that are just tendriling back up themselves. But I wanted to share this one with you guys because this has just been easy peasy ever since day one. Like, I've never had a problem with this plant. It has always grown fiercely for me, and I just think it's stunning. I mean, look at the new growth. This beautiful blushy pink before it sort of slowly fades down. These are my other Aglaonemas, for the record. There's 2 in that pot. And yeah, like tendrils just shoot out everywhere, you guys. Such a beautiful plant, growing in soil. And I had it inside all winter. It slowed down on growth for sure. Definitely loves to be outside, but yes. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. That is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope if you're a new planty parent, maybe you gained something from that. And if you've been in plants for a while, I think sometimes it's easy to sort of get caught up in it. I know, at least for me, when I first started out, I was so excited. I was so overwhelmed. I had all the questions. But it was just such an awesome time to be delving into this new hobby. And I think as you get into it, the further down your journey you go, you become settled, you become a little more lax. And I think we can forget sometimes how these simple, easy plants, oftentimes the ones that maybe we started out on, can have such a poetic meaning behind them. At least for me personally, when I'm down and when I feel like things aren't going my way, or the universe is maybe throwing me some curveballs, I can look over at these plants and I can be reminded that no matter what, no matter my mood, no matter my schedule, no matter what things are going on in my life, that these plants depend on me for their care, they continue to persevere no matter what. And I think there is something really beautiful in that message. And if you stop and you take a moment to really think about that, really think about how these plants, all they want is your love and a little bit of your time. And they will nourish you back in so many ways. So yeah, I hope I'm making sense. Excuse me. I'm just rambling at this point. But these plants, they give me a lot of joy, and they give me a lot of, they've taught me a lot of lessons. So if you are thinking about starting your planty journey, do it. I hope I've given you some awesome recommendations, and if you've been in the planty world, I hope this maybe will be a bit of a reminder to step back and take a minute to appreciate some of your OGs, some of your easy plants, and take a moment to just really appreciate them. But yes, that's all I have today. Thank you so much, you guys. I'll see you soon in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe. It's an easy, free way to help out my channel. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.